Mr. Chairman, sir, I would like to rise to participate in this very important matter, issue confronting the people of the state at this crucial moment and rightfully tabled by our honorable member, Sri A. Basamat. Mr. Chairman, sir, as it is written, refer to Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 5. Then the Lord shall bring you to the land which your fathers possessed, and thou shalt inherit them. He will multiply you and prosper you. With these blessings, we generate the kind of hope for our children, grandchildren, for generations and generations. And rightfully, I think the people of the state of Meghalaya must acknowledge and confess that the land that belongs to our people is truly a gift of God. And we must protect it. And we must ensure that the children and children, the children's children, generations after generations must inherit this land. And they should multiply and prosper in this land. It is based on this promise that we keep our hope. And we must, therefore, also see that no other forces can alienate us from this hope. And this obligation and responsibility of ensuring that when the forces of darkness act 24/7 to tempt us to make this promise null and void, I think we should fight tooth and nail. And that is precisely the reason why we see the present resistance to this whole attempt of land acquisition. Land acquisition. Now we must also look at as to who are the powers who are also in disguise by weaponizing the power, creating this alienation of land. Now, if we who are vested with the repository of state power do not utilize this power to protect this interest, then the people will obviously come out to the street. That is what we are seeing. We are seeing number of instances of manner of articulating people's grievances which come in diverse form. And one of the main triggering factor to generate that kind of sense of frustration, anger, is alienation of land, which is happening just in front of all of us. Now, while there are different laws which has been enacted to protect our people's interests in as far as the ownership of the land is concerned, it has become more important now for us to be more stringent in examining any proposal for any kind of land which may be required for the purpose of any investment. Because the Transfer of Property Act will prevail subsequently after the ownership is alienated. If you go by even the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court revolving around this coal mining related case, the judgment of the 3rd July 2019, how did we retain the right to own the mineral under the surface of the land? The Honorable Supreme Court contended and in its judgment pronounced the fact that whoever has the right over the surface of the land shall have the right over the mineral under the surface of the land. Based on these only, today, when the overall legal mining process has to be encouraged, this SOP has to revolve around these observations and these relevant acts. And that is precisely why today you see in the case of legal coal mining application, the grantor is the owner of the land, not the government. Because the owner is, I cannot grant or be a grantor to a land which I do not own. So this is precisely the interpretation of the law pronounced by the Honorable Supreme Court. And if we see, we should have corrected all other wrongs which still exist and which is still being implemented by the government. Now, if this is not corrected by the government, how will people correct it? We are not all legal experts in as far as the common man is concerned. We are lawmakers, but then people, the stakeholders, in absence of this realization of the government that today even the Honorable Supreme Court has given a judgment which has enabled the people to have the absolute ownership over everything, not over the surface alone, but even on what is there under the surface of the land. Imagine the kind of, the kind of both right and the power that has been vested upon our people. This is also based on our exhaustive exercise and engagement with Government of India. We refer to the relevant para 12 of the Constitution of, 62 of the Constitution of India. We took up the issue persistently, aggressively with Government of India, while trying to get the rights restored to our people, based on which the line ministries submitted before the Honorable Supreme Court that the relevant ministries, there are two ministries who have submitted those relevant affidavits before the Honorable Supreme Court prior to the judgment, saying that this ministry does not have any objection to the proposal of the state government of Meghalaya. Look at the quantum of work we have done to restore this right. Lest what was happening that it was as though the government is the owner, so government gives the lease. Government is the grantor. This is wrong. Now, after the 2019 judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, all this ownership which has been restored by virtue of that judgment must be implemented in right earnest. Otherwise, all that is being done by the government today is illegal. Yes, it is illegal. Now, if the owner of the land is going to be the grantor in respect of coal mines, why not for the other minerals? How is the other mineral, how will the, is there any other act which is applicable in regard to this so-called mining lease to be given? Government doesn't have the ownership, the people. Therefore, it's not just a question of the alienation of the land per se, but also alienation of the power, the right. Therefore, in this particular motion, I would like to stress before this august House that we be all connected with this restoration of right of our people in respect of all those resources under the surface of the land. And that is precisely why we should be very, very cautious. Because once the alienation of ownership over the surface of the land goes out of the hand of our people, then what happens? The right over the mineral under the surface of the land will also get alienated. I refer to the scripture. Because after us, our children shall be brought back, even if they go outside, and they shall inherit the land. And they shall multiply and prosper. Why are we in a hurry? Do we have enough resources to invest and really leverage upon these resources under the surface of the land? No. You want to invest, borrow, investor from outside, invite investors from outside. Look at how logistically Meghalaya is in a very difficult, from accessibility perspective, from logistic perspective. But why investors will not look at Meghalaya as one of the most favored destinations? If we allow, through whatever provisions, exemption provisions we are allowed to use, courtesy, whatever is there in the Meghalaya Land Regulation Act, Meghalaya Land Transfer Regulation Act. We need to correct them in view of this ownership which has been restored to our people. Now look at the global power struggle with the Honorable President of US, with his new, aggressive implementation of various foreign policies to really remain both, not only from the perspective of strength from defense perspective, but economically. Trying to look at how he can make other countries bow down to US and agree to all kinds of proposals of tariff war. What has happened with China? Because of the rare earth. Because of the rare earth. The first mover advantage that China has taken globally to take control of the rare earth which is required today. In this era where the technology is fast growing, faster than we can imagine. Because, as I say, the first mover advantage. Today, we do not know what is there under the surface of the land which I own, which the different clans who own the land owns. The Akhung land which is owned by my clan, the Akhung land, for Garo Hills we have Akhung land of almost all the clan. Whether Manda, whether Chambukong, whether your Chada, whether Nengmanja, all clans. Amazing way of gift of God. Similarly in Khasias, you look at every land belongs to our people. Therefore, huge land, big land, in the name of investment, I'm afraid. Because knowledge is power and knowledge can be weaponized. Knowledge can be weaponized, intelligence can be weaponized, and power can be, again, further weaponized. When I don't know what is under the surface of the land, somebody may already know. Courtesy technology, the satellite penetration power of knowing what is there under the surface. Limitless power of knowledge and technology. Thereby, having this advantage of first mover for anybody before our people, before our children can be at that stage. Therefore, there is a reason for us that lots of instruments of reaching out to our people to somehow take advantage of the helpless economic conditions. I saw happening in my own constituency. With pain, I'm telling you, in some of the Akhung land, more than half of the Akhung land is being acquired for whatever we may call for government purpose. Do the people know what is there under the surface of the land? Will the cost of the land be calculated on the basis of that whatever valuable asset is there under the surface of the land? No. Today, Meghalaya is blessed with many minerals, Mr. Chairman, sir. I don't have to name them all. But even much more than the names which we know, there are. Our people will be rich. But we have to allow them to be able to harness these benefits in due course of time when it is right for them. Not for our generation. But if we are greedy and we want everything now, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, sir. The generations next will remember us for failing them, for betraying them. There are many other things which require our attention. But this is in a broader perspective. What is going to happen for our future generations in the generations to come? Today, ours is to pave the way for theirs. We give our today for their future. That is how we should look at it. But if we are looking at to see what we can do today at the cost of their future, it is just contrary to what is expected of fathers, parents. Therefore, with painful heart, I see many things happen. You look at how painful it is for people who came and submitted this representation, which has been submitted also to other honorable leaders of the state, whom they think will protect the interests of our Jaitanriyu, our people. I would like to refer to one particular incident which was painfully observed by many of us, which happened on 19 December 2025 in one of the places called Daistong. We read this news. It was raised even in the parliament by our honorable member of the parliament, Lok Sabha. Why is it happening? Are we not for the people? Government must be seen as protector of the interests of the people. Rather, if government is seen as the power that enables perversion of justice, then people are forced to knock the door of the judiciary. People should not be pushed to that situation when people should knock the door of the judiciary. Rather, it must be the government in power, the authority, in the true spirit of the core values of our democracy, gives all the justice needed. Any possible omission or commission, for whatever reasons, when brought before the government, must be taken cognizance of and addressed in the right earnest. When people complain, they are seen as too weak. Because the people in authority try to abuse the power which is vested as a repository of state power in them. People who occupies the position of authority are custodian of the power that is vested on the state. But this is to protect our people. Not to force through, not to bulldoze. But if you go by this instance of this particular incident on 19 December, that means the authority is weaponizing the power that is vested upon the authority to bulldoze, suppress, oppress, and grab the land which they want. For whose interest? Are we not to prioritize the protection of our people's interests first? To defend the interests of our people first? But to defend the interests of the people who are eyeing for those land? Mr. Chairman, sir, these are the incidents which reflect the missed priority of this government. Rather than protecting and defending the interests of our people, the government of the day, with all the power under its command, is trying to protect the interests of others at the cost of our own people. Mr. Chairman, sir, our honorable mover of the motion, special motion, and honorable member from Dadingri, have rightfully referred to a few other things, including the Benami Transaction Act. We have amended this prohibition of Meghalaya, prevention of Meghalaya, Prevention of Benami Transaction Act in the state of Meghalaya. It was amended in 2016. Why was it amended? And in fact, I would like to refresh our memory about one of the measures that we resorted to when we were in the government. In respect of the application of that particular section of Meghalaya Land Transfer Regulation Act, we suspended operation of those provisions which allows transfer for any investment for any proposed industry under the relevant section of the Act in respect of Ribo area. Why was it necessary? Because in Ribo area, what was happening along the Meghalaya-Assam border, and that is one of the triggering factor why there's land alienation in respect of this bilateral engagement and ultimate attempt to solve these inter-state boundary areas of differences ultimately created that alienation of our land towards Assam, which the government of the day very happily signed. Along the border with Assam, look at the difference of the land costs on the other side of our interstate border in Assam and other side of the interstate border in Meghalaya. Huge difference. Now, in the name of these investments, so many exemptions for transfer of land to companies were given. And these land are being used for other commercial activity, not for the purpose for which originally the approval was accorded. And most of these, again, in the name of various tribals, many land has been bought by people from outside the state who do not belong to the tribal community. In the name of our tribals, Garo, Khasi, and other tribes, some are somebody's driver, somebody's assistant. Therefore, there is a need to go and investigate all this rightful ownership, whether it is by virtue of weaponizing this instrument of Benami transaction. That's why we amended the act. But this act had to be enforced. This act has enough teeth, but unless enforced, where is the deterrence? No deterrence. It continues with impunity. I was pressurized politically to revoke that order after a certain period of time. So I had to do it because pending amendment, just executive order cannot supersede the provision of the law. But if we have done it, it was for a purpose. The purpose was to ensure that there is no further alienation of land to other people from the ownership of our own people. Poverty can be a reason for people to sometimes compromise and surrender. And therefore, everybody cannot sustain hardship. Even if the father is able to somehow resist, then the son-in-law will say, the mother-in-law will be convinced by the daughter. These things we are seeing. I also try to know why in the first instance you all agreed. Somebody is there taking advantage of the poverty of our people. Taking advantage of the poverty of the people. What can be worse than this? This is the worst scenario that is happening. In that area where we have this unfortunate incident, where there is a conflict, unfortunate loss of precious life in West Garo Hills. The triggering factor is same. Alienation of the right over the land abuse of these resources by people belonging to non-tribal community in violation of various laws. Now, any illegal extraction of mineral, again it is covered under relevant different laws. Again, these laws are also so stringent that they are cognizable offense. But nobody is taking cognizance of these illegalities, as though it is somebody else's job. Cognizable offense is cognizable offense. How many times do we have to be reminded? Just to make it simple and make our people understand about how we interpret cognizable offenses when a person violates the provision of the POCSO Act. Anybody who knows have to report an act. That is what is cognizable offense. Now, in this particular case, number of reports have been sent to the higher authority about what was going on there, about the illegality. No response. No authority, no superior authority took even the necessary responsibility to take cognizance of such reports, which were officially made available. No one was prosecuted. Cases are registered sometimes for the sake of registration. Then the police will submit before the court in view of the lack of blah, 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 no evidence, no substantive evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the alleged illegal activity was committed. Then the petitioner will receive a notice from the court. Why the court should not accept the report from the police? How many people can actually spend to engage with the legal counsel to counter the report of the police? And therefore, this whole exercise, this whole alienation of land is linked and connected with economic activities. Business, which is again indirectly robbing the opportunity of our own people and depriving the state also from precious revenue. But in the instance case, the alienation of the land and the right over the land and the assets and resources is much a crucial issue than even the loss of revenue. When we say loss of revenue is so crucial again, because any act to deprive the state from realizing the revenue that is due to the government, which is supposed to accrue to the public exchequer, itself is an economic offense. But here in Meghalaya, this has become order of the day. It is not a disorder of the day, it has become the order of the day. I was looking at the revenue realization on minor minerals. Realized there's a huge up and down. We always set target. And if target is not achieved, then we do complete, review and find out. Mr. Chairman, sir, while this particular issue of land alienation is being, I think even the mover of the special motion, even when we try to take up this issue in preceding sessions, it is because of how we feel, how I feel, how public feel, how the people of the state feel. The people of the state feel today that land acquisition is also being weaponized with different intent, with different priority. Read between the lines, Mr. Chairman. And if we want to be really honest and really find out what I'm trying to say and vindicate these, then it will be very unpleasant. Very, very unpleasant. land acquisition is being weaponized. Now, while land acquisition process also needs the authorities to protect the interests of the landowners and the affected people, on the other way around, even in the process of land acquisition for any developmental purpose, whether it is for road, expansion of road or construction of infrastructure, again, victimization of the weak and refusal to give justice to the victims, which amounts to perversion of justice, is happening. People keep on coming again and again to the authorities. Then I am told that, you kindly go and meet so-and-so. Yes. Whether it is in the matter of acquisition of land for Tura Dalu, that JICA-funded scheme. Social impact assessment, as per the relevant section of the Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2013. It is mandatory and it must be made public. It must be available in public domain. How many such land acquisition process, having embarked upon this social impact assessment, have made these findings of social impact assessment available in public domain? It is our job and responsibility to enlighten our community, our people, so that the knowledge becomes the power to protect themselves. They know. They will know once they know. But then, how many of our people who are affected by this alienation of land during the land acquisition process are aware of the provision of these protective relevant sections which protect the landowners? Unfortunately, no. Now, what does the social impact assessment is expected as per the mandate of the law? Now, I may be the landowner, but if there are 10 tenants in my land and they have livelihood activities in that particular parcel of land, if through land acquisition process, this particular parcel of land goes, then their business is dislocated. To restore their business, how much time, how much duration they will need? Whether they can have same kind of livelihood activity elsewhere. All these things are comprehensively required to be compiled. And accordingly, ensure that this benefit in terms of the compensation, rehabilitation, and resettlement is passed on to the project-affected people. This is not done. Why not? Whose job it is to say that, oh, you're being deprived. Don't worry, you will have this, because this is the provision of the law. Same thing is happening in case of this acquisition of land, whether it is Shillong Western Bypass. And I don't know why the alignment of that land, the alignment of that Shillong Western Bypass, which was frozen prior to 2018, was again revised. New alignment. After that, what has happened? The land acquisition process we keep on seeing carried by the media. Some of the people who are affected by this land acquisition have become the victim of this whole process. It is because this provision of law, Fair Compensation and Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act, in short we call it LARR 2013. The provision of this mandate of the law, which is designed to protect particularly the tribal people, indigenous people, weaker section of people who are affected due to such developmental initiative and the resultant land acquisition. Through the land alienation, their interests can be protected, their livelihood can be protected and restored. Therefore, what is the meaning of the word resettlement and rehabilitation? Why these two important words? Because there is a need when there is a dislocation of livelihood. Now, this particular instrument of law is enacted and adopted by all of us because we are the lawmakers. And the moment this act was enacted, we ensured that Meghalaya adopt and implement the provisions of this law. So therefore, in the process of alienation of land, where land is compulsorily required for certain developmental purposes, let us take cognizance of the impact of land alienation and dislocation of the livelihood activities and see that they are given the kind of support and justice in sync, in conformity with the provision of relevant laws. And there are multiple laws which are being utilized for the land acquisition, not just one law. But the binding and mandatory provision of LARR 2013 is required to be invariably factored while going ahead with the process of land acquisition. And in absence of that, the whole land acquisition process can be declared null and void. That is what the law says. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, sir, I would like to urge upon the government that in those areas where the affected people have not been taken care of due to improper process of LA, particularly for these national highways, it must be relooked. The government must be seen as giving justice. People don't have money to knock the door of the judiciary. It is not affordable. So let there be no insensitivity which will create the perception that government is engaging, the authorities are engaging in perversion of justice. And therefore, with this few submission, I make my points, particularly from the perspective of the grievous harm that will be inflicted upon our generation next if we do not take precaution now. Let this act also be so amended that we can stringently prevent this so-called land acquisition spree. Land bank, land bank. And another point I would like to get from the government is to invoke the relevant provision of section, I think it is section 8. No, that eviction part. There is a provision for eviction of those occupants of our tribal land. Section 8, subsection 1. If any person is found in possession of any land otherwise, then in accordance with the provision of this act, the competent authority may serve a notice upon such person requiring him to show cause why he should not be evicted from the land, and after giving him an opportunity of being heard, require him to vacate the land and remove any building or fences which may have been erected thereon within such time as may be fixed in this behalf. I don't have to go through the whole provision of the law. So, certain provisions, what was felt necessary is to protect the interests of our people. Because when the land is acquired by citing some objective and purpose, if it is not used, it has to come back. But it should not be owned in perpetuity, whether by a corporate or whether by a firm or even a company of the government. Because what happens if the government also holds the land, then there may be a time when by well-determined, predetermined intent, that particular entity becomes bankrupt, so you sell it. The relevant provisions of the company's laws will come. Now there is an attempt by the authorities to somehow reinforce the people with the kind of sense of security that don't worry, it is for the government. Don't worry, it is a government company. Well, company is a company. We have seen all this whole process of disinvestment, where government companies are being sold to the private companies. Initially some share, then subsequently some share. Subsequently, finally, the full 100% share. What happens? Alienation. By choice. By weaponizing the provision of the Companies Act. Therefore, there's an indirect way of alienation of land through government also. And sometimes we may be caught at unguarded moment as people who are in authority. That's why whenever these kind of steps are taken, they must be put to stringent scrutiny by the authorities concerned and the public as a whole, lest other forces try to take advantage of a situation of our not being vigilant and allow this illegality to take place. Illegality in true spirit of what is intended by the law. Therefore, with these few submissions, I urge upon the government that look at all those illegal occupations of the land which otherwise belong to our people, which has been occupied by abusing these few provisions of the law and the alienated land are being used for some other purpose. Let this land be restored to our own people as per the provision of this relevant section, subsection 1 of section 8 of the law, and many other relevant sections, which gives the power to the authorities. Other than that, there has to be some integration with the ADCs, with the traditional institutions, which require more exhaustive discussion and deliberation and debate. To make that we have this sense of oneness when we come to protect the land of our people and see that the promise that God has given us, as written in Scripture, is truly realized by our children. Let generations after generations be recipient of this promise. With these few words, Mr. Chairman, sir, I resume my seat.